How do you think about it? It's one of the things we've been wrestling with is this dynamic of what is the neutral rate, like you described. It's not a disaster today economically. Where we're going is questionable, as you said. But if you think about with the debate a few months ago was we need to keep raising rates to get to neutral, and now all of a sudden, gosh, now we need to cut. It creates a very, very tricky thing for the Fed around credibility, et cetera, and what is neutral and how far do you have to move from that. How do you think about that?
I worry, Rick. I worry a lot. I think a credible Fed that's underpinned by a strategic view is critical. I think that over the years, the Fed has become way too data dependent, and the data swings all over the place. So I worry. I think increasingly the Fed may be in a lose-lose situation. If they don't validate what's priced in by markets, which I think is excessive, if they don't validate that, they risk a Q4 market dislocation. But if they validate that, they risk causing economic and financial instability down the road. So I do worry, and the answer is stop focusing on the Fed, look at other policy instruments. And by the way, we talk all about the Fed. This problem is magnified 1,000 times in Europe. Great. I mean, the ECB situation is much worse than what the Fed is.
Great.
Yeah, Mohamed, how are you? It's Mike Collins. You mentioned Mexico as kind of a new salvo in tariff war. So that brings up the political thing. We've wrestled in our shop with Trump, right? We've called it the Trump put. If things get really bad, he will cave to some extent, or he will change his negotiating tact. I'm asking you to put your political hat on. What's your view on how his behavior may adapt to weak markets, weak economic data?
So certainly his behavior has been consistent with what you just said. But, there's a cumulative effect. That there's a limit to how often you can play a repeated game. I lived quite happily with the notion that U.S.-China trade tensions weren't going to go away, that at best you're going to get a ceasefire. And that's because when it comes to U.S. and China, it's much more than economics. It's about national security as well. And I couldn't see that put in a box and cleanly wrapped up and put away. So I've always been of the view that the China-U.S. tensions will persist. U.S.-Mexico is very different. It's an ally. Goods go back and forth across the border several times. It is a done deal in terms of what was agreed to with Canada and Mexico. So that one for me is the outlier. And I would suggest in your shop, you spend a lot of time focusing on what does that mean, as opposed to what does the other stuff mean.
Anastasia?
Mohamed, it's Anastasia. To pick up on the point about Mexico uncertainty, some people expect that it will actually get settled in fairly short order. But my question to you is, how damaging has this policy been of back and forth tariffs on longer term economic fundamentals? Have we already inflicted enough damage to where we should not be expecting a quick snapback on business confidence and CapEx, even if all of these trade issues get settled for now?
So a critical point, and thank you for raising it. My expectation too is that it will be settled. It's not with a great sense of conviction because this is a political calculus rather than an economic calculus. But Mexico has shown the ability to make timely concession. Remember, Mexico came first, came even before Canada in diffusing the prior round of trade tensions. Having said that, I think you have a residual impact on uncertainty. Is it disastrous? No, but it's yet another factor that contributes to growing concerns as to whether the U.S. can maintain a 2.5% to 3% growth rate.